You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Good morning. Welcome to Catholic Chicago on WNDZ 750 AM, 312-255-8408, 312-255-8408. You can also get us on youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. Father Greg Sakowitz, the rector of the cathedral, and Mark Teresa unable to join again this morning. But we have a tremendous program lined up here in Chicago. The time is 8:01. Folks, the Cubs are playing great baseball. Took 2 out of 3 from the Milwaukee Brewers. Find themselves 3 games out of first. 5th seed in the wild card for the playoffs, White Sox. There's always next year. And the Bears, a week from Sunday, open up at home against the Green Bay Packers. They must finally beat the Packers. They no longer have Aaron Rodgers. It's now going to be Love, quarterback for the Packers. But tremendous program lined up. We have with us Dr. Edward Gordon is in studio for the full hour today. He's back by popular demand. Among the topics Dr. Gordon will discuss is the current status of COVID and the healthcare industry and also U.S. and world economics. And Dr. Edward Gordon is a writer, speaker, researcher, economist, dear friend, and Edward and Elaine, very, very active at Holy Name Cathedral. Dr. Edward Gordon, welcome to the program this morning. How are you, Edward?
Fine. Now I'm going to ask you a question. Are the Sox moving to Cuba?
There's talk of moving to Nashville. There's talk of moving to Vegas. The team may be sold, but probably kept in Chicago. The White Sox have a tremendous history here in Chicago.
Right, absolutely.
But this has been beyond a frustrating year for both players, fans, everybody alike. And the Cubs are really putting together. People thought this was more of like a rebuilding year for the Cubs, but all the free agents and people they have on the team, the guys, have really come together. They feed off each other. Good pitching, good hitting, good solid defense up the middle especially. But, hey, hats off to the Cubs because they're surprising a lot of people. And they beat a very tough team, the Brewers, 2 out of 3, the past couple of games in Chicago. And now, how many years have you and Elaine been to Cathedral as parishioners? You moved.
I've been there for 40 years. Elaine for 45.
Okay, so
a long time.
Pushing 40, 45 years together.
Yes.
And now you have been a guest many times on the program. You know, thank you for your time and your generosity.
Thank you. You're welcome.
You have been on the program pre-COVID, during COVID. I want to say post-COVID. However, COVID is back on the rise again.
Yes.
And a question I've asked you every program, including with Mark, is if this were a baseball game, what inning are we in regarding COVID?
I think now we should talk about if this were the World Series.
Okay.
What game are we playing, all right?
Game 1?
Game 1 is over. Now we're into Game 2.
Of the World Series.
Of the World Series.
Yeah, 'cause I remember the very first time we asked that, you said COVID was in the top of the 2nd inning, and then like bottom of the 4th, top of the 6th, and then 8th inning. But I think maybe in many ways, Edward, let our listeners know, because you do a lot of research, study, what are the latest statistics you're hearing? What's the latest word on COVID? Again, our number is 312-255-8408. Where do things stand, Edward?
All right. Well, let's clear the air and first tell most people that most of you have had some of the vaccines. Some of you have gotten sick and have built up immunity to COVID. So what's happening right now is there are very few COVID cases in the Chicago metropolitan area. However, the number of people that are being hospitalized with COVID is rising very slowly, all right? Now, again, I caution people, particularly if they are older, if they're over 65, or if they have other illnesses, Parkinson's, diabetes, heart conditions,
So autoimmune.
other conditions, they really need to get vaccinated
Why?
because it will help them not get extremely sick. All right?
Now, how many? Right now, there have been a total of 5 possible shots to this point.
Right.
The first 2 and then 3 boosters. The new shot is available starting when?
End of this month, beginning of October.
Okay,
Now,
got it.
and why you want to get it is that there is a new strain. It's called BA 2.56. And the reason we're concerned about it is that it has gone through 30 mutations, which means that we don't know how potent this variation will be. Now, the pharmaceutical companies right now are trying to improve the next shot, and they will, to account for this variation. So you need to get that new shot, particularly if you're in those higher risk groups.
Now, the question I have, Edward, and that is, we see so many articles online, in print, that says do not get vaccination shots. It's been a big hoax. You know, people are dying from the shot. I mean, I've never seen something that is so divided an issue regarding COVID shots. What's your take on all this?
We've talked about postmodernism before. This is an age in which science, tradition, past history is thrown out of the box, and anybody's opinion is just as good as anybody else's. Am I an expert, or I'm just another talking head that doesn't know what they're saying? Well, I spend a great deal of time as a social scientist researching historical issues. This is probably the most important historical event since the Second World War worldwide. So when you ask me how long ago to come on and talk about the Spanish flu versus COVID, so I knew about the plague, but no one had asked me to do a whole program on the plague before you did, Father. So I've spent a great deal of time on this. I've talked to people who are experts on it. And the key with this is it's real. It's a historical event. Over 1 million people in the United States have died from it. This is the truth. This is the verifiable truth. There are too many sites, maybe 50 to 500 sites on the social media spawning all kinds of conspiracy theories and ideas. Take a look at the origin of that. Where is this information coming from? Is it from a real expert, or is it from someone spinning a tale in order to sell advertising, write a book, get elected to a political office, or whatever?
Now, as we move toward fall into winter, will the numbers just invariably go up?
Right now, the prediction is with this new variation, we could go anywhere from 10% to 38% increase in people getting sick and ending up in the hospital. We don't know yet. Why? Because each variant of this disease is different. It would be as if I said to you, now many of your listeners were children when polio came out. If I said to them at that time there were 38 variants of polio, you had to go back every year and get a shot. I remember getting 2 shots. One was a cube and one was a shot. Why? Because they wanted to cover that disease well in the 50s, so I didn't get it. The same is true now, all right? Now, there are people who are anti-vaccine no matter what the disease is.
True.
All right? Now, I know nurses who have resisted this because they have seen people in the hospital that had a reaction to a vaccine.
COVID shot.
Right. And you can also get a reaction from taking aspirin, Bufferin, all medicines have risks when you take them. These vaccines are tested so that if 1 million people get the vaccine, how many are going to have a bad reaction to it? Very few. May you get a reaction? The odds are small. What's greater, you getting COVID and getting up, being in the hospital or dying from it, or getting the vaccine and having a reaction? I can tell you the risks of this are real. When you think that more people died from this disease than all the wars the United States has been in since 1776, if you're not afraid of this, you're stupid, and you need to take precautions, all right? When you get in your car, do you put your seatbelt on? Oh, I don't need a seatbelt. Remember the resistance to that for a long time?
That's very true.
How many people have not died because they put a seatbelt on?
I've had more people say
Hundreds
to me
of thousands,
their
millions.
seatbelt saved their life.
That's right.
The car flipped over,
Right.
and without a seatbelt, they'd be out the window.
Right.
And it would save their life. Another question along the same lines is, explain this phenomenon, long COVID.
Yes. Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah, I just find that, many people, of course, have come down with COVID, and
Yes.
some have become very, very sick, including the hospital.
Well,
others,
brain fog,
symptoms.
shortness of breath, chest pains. And right now, there are a third of the people who survive COVID have long COVID.
1/3.
A third.
That's a high rate. I
It
have one friend who has caused double vision, imbalance when walking. There are a good number of people at Shirley Ryan doing rehab from long COVID.
That's right.
To get their strength back, to get their balance, ability to walk again.
Yes.
And in some ways, this long COVID is incredibly scary because some may have it, they're afraid the rest of their lives.
That's right. Well, I want to assure your listeners that Northwestern Hospital has a COVID-19 center where they're studying long COVID and the effects of it and trying to figure out how to treat people with long COVID. So this is another reason why you want to make sure you get your vaccine.
Have they discovered that, for example, Joe gets COVID, Mary gets COVID, Joe recovers, Mary long COVID? Have they figured out what causes some individuals long COVID and others, they get COVID and they move on with their lives?
It all depends on your immune system.
Interesting.
Now, the two of us are we may be much wiser because we're older now, right, Greg? But our immune systems aren't what they were when they were 30 years old, all right? That's the way it is. As you get older, your body weakens, systems weaken, all right? Now, you can take precautions. I do exercises. You do exercises.
Not as much as you.
Well, I don't know about that. But anyway, so that is one of the differences. I mean, I talk to nurses at Northwestern, where I volunteer for the Cathedral and the Knights of Malta, bring communion to Catholics. I talked to nurses there that had COVID 2 or 3 times, all right, and they recovered. Now, some of them may have also gotten long COVID. Maybe older nurses did. But long COVID could occur with a younger person as well.
So older. Look, we're going to take a break here right now. You're listening to Catholic Chicago on WNDZ. 7:50 a.m., 312-255-8408, 312-255-8408. Also get us on youtube.com/CatholicChicago here in Chicago. We are with Dr. Edward Gordon talking the first half hour on COVID, long COVID. Again, if you have a question, 312-255-8408. And we'll be back after these messages. And again, do not touch that dial.
Catholic Charities After Supper Visions program offers guests of our Tuesday night supper the opportunity to learn the art of photography. These talented guests, who are often experiencing homelessness, are offered disposable cameras, and they work with volunteer professional photographers to learn the basics of taking photos. Then, the artists go out and capture images on film of anything they find to be beautiful or interesting in the world. Meet the artists and see their extraordinary photos at this year's After Supper Visions photo exhibition on Friday, September 22nd from 5 to 7 p.m. in Vincent Hall at 721 North LaSalle Street. That's Friday, September 22nd from 5 to 7 p.m. Visit After Supper Visions for more information. At After Supper Visions, we are developing film, talent, and hope.
I am a seminarian.
The church needs compassionate and well-trained priests to help guide each of us through life.
What inspires me, what draws me always to the priesthood is continue to see priests be a beacon of hope for other people.
You can play a part in the education of these young men as they prepare for a life of service to others.
I want to be that beacon of hope too, and it sets my heart on fire.
To support our seminarians, make your gift at archchicago.org/seminarian fund or call 312-534-7959.
Caring adults make all the difference in the lives of adolescents. Catholic Charities understands this, and our mentorship programs provide a free opportunity for young adults to spend time with volunteers who genuinely care about them. This program is ideal for youth aged 9 through 12 who may need support navigating the challenges of childhood and early adolescence. Our amazing volunteers serve as friends who help youth recognize their strengths and empower them to reach their full potential. Catholic Charities conducts a thorough background check on every volunteer, and our program coordinator closely monitors and supports every relationship. Mentoring is a fun after-school program that can help young adults build confidence and enjoy fun activities with their peers, too. To learn more, visit CatholicCharities.net or call 312-655-7970 in Cook County and 847-782-4224 in Lake County. We're connecting youth with great role models. Join us today.
Welcome back to Catholic Chicago on WNDZ 750 AM 312-255-8408. Also get us on youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. Father Greg Sakowicz and our guest, Dr. Edward Gordon. Also very impressed with Clinton Cottrell, who is our producer and director doing solo to pull the whole program together. So Clint, very impressed, doing the whole thing by yourself. No Michael, no Brian. So keep up the great work. Getting back to the program, Edward.
Yes.
Continue on this whole thrust of long COVID.
Well, one of the things that people should be aware of is some of the potential damage that long COVID can and offer people if they get it. And one of the things is damage to your lungs, the long term. Recently, a study was released which showed people's lungs and what they looked like when they first got COVID, and then how it gradually improved. And for some of these folks who are taking it a year or 2 years, and their lungs are still not regenerated, and they've been in treatment, all right? They're hopeful that they can get back to a normal lung capacity, but they simply aren't certain of it. So, and that's one reason why, again, I caution people with this new mutation that has occurred. We don't know how severe that mutation will be, and you need to be cautious, and you need to get that new shot as it comes out. End of September, the beginning of October, it will be available.
Now, Edward, when you talk about the lungs have been damaged, in what way? Scar tissue?
Scar tissue, yes. There's, I can hold this up. This
Good.
is a article in the New York Times that came out. Oops, get this right. In the New York Times, which was showing people's lungs and the lack of capacity for breathing,
It is really long COVID, I know, has really knocked people out for a couple of months at a time. Was it, I think, Jonathan Tays of the Blackhawks had COVID? Was it either Patrick Kane or Jonathan Tays, the Blackhawks, I think, had COVID, and I maybe even had long COVID, where they had to take the year off from hockey, if I have the right reason. But we're talking, it's one thing to get COVID, but what also amazes me is other people who have gotten COVID asymptomatic, didn't even know they had it,
right,
and are fine. So
right.
every human being is different, older, younger, autoimmune problems or not. Now, connected with this whole thing, what is this thing we're hearing about called RSV?
Well, RSV is a respiratory illness that occurs many times with young children.
Okay.
Right? However, now it also is appearing with older adults. And with older adults, it's very serious for the reasons we just discussed. If you have a weak immune system or other intervening illnesses, it is very dangerous. So now there is an RSV shot for older adults that is available. And
now, would you recommend getting that shot?
Yes, I recommend that if you're over 65 to get that shot.
Now, that RSV has nothing to do with COVID.
No, it's a completely different thing.
Is it a flu?
It's a respiratory disease.
Gotcha.
All right. So I am prone to sinus infections myself because of allergies. So I will get an RSV shot.
So that shot is yet available, not available?
Oh, it's available.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is available. So you could get it anytime you want.
And so, for example, when someone says they've come down with RSV, I presume it's heavy coughing, hacking, breathing problems. Is it something similar to like pneumonia?
Somewhat, but it can be even more dangerous than pneumonia. So the key is to get the shot. Don't play games with it. Of course, there are, just like with COVID, there are medicines that can be prescribed so you won't end up in the hospital. Same thing with COVID now.
What is that medicine called again? Those who have come down.
Plaxevil.
And what does that do?
It basically counteracts some of the symptoms from COVID itself and allows the body's immune system to be activated to fight off the COVID virus.
Now, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but of course back in mid-March of 2020, everything got shut down.
Right.
Churches were shut down.
Right.
Restaurants shut down.
Right.
Ball games were shut down.
We don't expect that's going to happen this time. However, we don't know because every time these mutations occur, they can be less potent or more potent, okay? But the chief difference, we have two chief differences right now. We have vaccines that we can develop quickly for these variants, and two, we have antiviral medicines that will keep you out of the hospital if you get it.
Okay.
Before, we had nothing. Remember that. I remember when
vaccines
this
and no
started,
vaccine,
and I came down from my house and stood on Michigan Avenue, and there were no cars, no buses, no people, and this freaked me out. I thought an atomic bomb was going to fall in Chicago.
It's interesting. It was back in March or April of 2020. It was noon. I'm over by Pearson and Michigan Avenue.
Yes.
I crossed the street at noon with the green light against me going on Pearson across Michigan. No cars.
No cars.
I thought to myself, and it was a beautiful day. It was okay, April, so it was 35, 40, 45 degrees.
Yes.
No rain.
Right.
No sleet. It was sunny.
Right.
And I'm crossing the street, and I thought, it was around noon, I thought, this is this is eerie.
Yes, I took
said,
pictures.
Yeah, I said, there's
Took some
something
pictures.
wrong with this. I also go back on Easter Sunday, early April 2020. The cathedral was closed. We normally have close to 10,000
Yes.
people on Easter morn with all the
Yes.
masses. The doors were locked. It really was truly depressing.
It
I
was
sat
sad.
in the cathedral
Yes.
praying at 10 in the morning. The doors are locked. The lights are off. And I thought, this is surreal.
It was.
And I pray to God we never go back to that, which we probably won't because of the fact of the reasons you mentioned.
Well, when the cardinal started the mass with you,
Mm-hmm.
and I was the lector for a few times,
Mm-hmm.
and there I'm reading it to this huge empty church
Yeah.
with seat 1,400 people. So
I
I
do
do
wanna-
not.
I do wanna let her-
I do not think we will go back to that.
I do want to let
All
our
right.
listeners know, so sometimes when people still to this day watch the TV Mass on ABC with the Cardinal at 9:30, and of
Yes.
course I'm the concelebrant, is folks, Holy Name Cathedral is open
Right.
7 days a week. Our Mass schedule, one on Saturday late afternoon, 4 on Sunday morning, one Sunday afternoon, 6 Masses for the weekend. But the reason we don't have a congregation when the Cardinal is because of the fact that we're limited to like 28 minutes on air with the
Yes.
Mass.
It's amazing how he can do it.
And he gives a tremendous homily
Right.
week in and week out.
Yes.
No notes.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
no notes
Yes.
and great,
Well,
great homilies.
Being a Eucharistic minister for 10:30 Mass, the numbers of people are getting greater and greater.
Yes.
So I'm almost running out of Eucharist, giving or the wine cup.
The
It's almost
crowds
empty.
Have, the
with-
crowds have gone up.
Yeah,
In the last
really.
couple of minutes we have before we go to break, you'll be with us for the whole hour, but we're going to flip
Yes.
topics, and that is
Yes.
what to this day still is the greatest myth you're always combating regarding COVID-19?
That it doesn't exist, that it's a conspiracy by the drug companies and people in government to make money. And that is just an outright subterfuge, lie, propaganda. All right? I am committed to the truth, and what I'm telling you is based on the best research that I am accessible to me from a wide variety of sources.
Is that still out there where people think
Yes.
COVID has
Yes.
been nothing but a myth
Yes.
and a moneymaker for
Yes.
the vaccine
Yes.
companies?
Yes.
Mm.
It's stupid and it's wrong. It's a lie. And we should call it what it is, a lie.
And many
And,
people,
many people have
believe it.
died because of it.
Edward, as a priest, I've had more than one funeral regarding because of COVID. Had one case where the man was 71. This was right when it came out in 2020, 2021. He gets COVID. His wife gets COVID. He dies. She dies 3 days later. I had a double funeral.
Yes.
They had one daughter and
Well, yes.
and husband and wife from COVID.
Yes.
And so it is incredibly real. We're going to go to a break here on Catholic Chicago, WNDZ 750 AM, 312-255-8408. Also get us on YouTube.com/Catholic Chicago. Father Greg Sakowicz, Dr. Edward Gordon. We've been speaking the first half hour on COVID. We're going to flip topics. Stay with us. And again, do not touch that dial.
At Catholic Charities, we want to remind you that we are here for anyone who is a victim of domestic violence or anyone who has a concern about someone they think may be a victim. Domestic violence affects millions of people each year, both women and men, of every race, religion, culture, and economic status. It includes physical, psychological, and emotional abuse, inflicted in both subtle and overt ways. The impact on children can be devastating. If you or someone you know are victims of domestic violence and you are looking for a place for healing and recovery, call us at 773-935-3434 in Cook County and 224-430-4977 in Lake County. A safer, happier tomorrow can begin today.
This is year 44 for me teaching. When I started here, there were teachers here that had taught me when I was a student. Now I'm the old person. Right now, I teach junior high math. I love when kids find what I'm teaching to be fun and they get it. I see that light bulb go off and it's a thrill. People are always amazed. What? You're here for 44 years? It's hard for me to believe, frankly. I love what I do. Every summer I think, oh, I miss the classroom. Even on the weekends, I think I can't wait to get back on Monday and teach those quadratic equations.
Shape the next generation of leaders. Teach. Apply today at archchicago.org/schooljobs.
The Cemetery Ministry is a core ministry of our Catholic faith tied to the corporal works of mercy. It's comforting to know that our Catholic cemeteries are caring for the remains of our loved ones awaiting the resurrection. There are 44 Archdiocese of Chicago Catholic cemeteries willing to help you in your time of loss. Call 708-449-6100 or visit CatholicCemeteriesChicago.org. Catholic Cemeteries, serving the Catholic community since 1837.
You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Thanks for letting us be part of your morning. Now again, Catholic Chicago.
And welcome back to Catholic Chicago on WNDZ 750 AM. Father Greg Sakowicz and Dr. Edward Gordon, 312-255-8408. Also get us on youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. Edward, you have always been a tremendous guest.
Thank you.
You speak the truth with all the knowledge you have and trying to synthesize everything. But now we're going to switch gears to go from COVID to a topic that is incredibly important to all of us, the world economy, or the U.S. economy. So I'll just toss you the ball right now.
Okay. Well, I work as a historical labor economist. My training is in history, but I've done a tremendous amount of work in labor stuff. And as a result, I spend a great deal of my time looking at economic issues here in the U.S. and around the world. Right now, the U.S. is doing fairly well. Its economy is growing somewhat, but we should be aware that there is a great deal of turmoil going on in the U.S. economy. I think most people see that. Certainly the inflation is there. Prices have gone up. Food, I mean, go to the food store, you get price sticker shock when you buy your groceries. Gas has come down somewhat. But what is driving all of this? Well, when COVID struck, the government bailed out many businesses, because smaller businesses in particular, because they were afraid that with everything shut down, as we just talked about before, the only thing open was the pharmacy and the food store.
And the hospitals.
Right, and hospitals. The economy could have gone into free fall and caused a depression. So the government pumped in a great deal of aid to smaller businesses.
Was that through the PPA?
The PPA, right. And also they provided funds for salaries for workers so that they would have some support.
And keep money pumped back into the economy.
Right, exactly. Now, some people have said, well, they shouldn't have done that. Well, if they had not done that, we probably would have gone into a depression.
Similar to 29? 30?
Who knows how severe?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But the whole world was in this. This was a worldwide phenomenon. So most companies took some supports like we did. Now, a lot of people are retiring right now. 10,000 people a day are retiring.
10,000 a day.
Right.
At about averaging what age?
It could be early retirement or later retirement.
Okay.
All right. We're talking about over 3 million people a year.
Wow.
All right. 72 to 73 million between 2010 and 2030. This will continue at 10,000 people a day into the 2030s. Now, there's some big impacts to this. The biggest one, of course, is Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
You paid into it.
Mm-hmm.
I've paid into it. So you're going to get a benefit from it, right?
Correct.
Right. Also, Medicare. So now you have this huge spike that we have talked about, and we've been discussing this since 1980s. We've been talking about what is going to happen to Social Security and Medicare.
Mm-hmm.
Now, during the Reagan administration, some adjustments were made to Social Security.
Like what?
They raised some of the retirement ages, and they also raised the amount of money that people were going to contribute to Social Security. That was going to help us get through to a certain time in this century. That now is past.
Mm.
So right now, some economists are saying the government really is basically an insurance company with an army. Because the majority of the money in the federal budget shortly will be spent on Social Security, Medicare, and defense.
And now what's making it harder regarding Social Security and Medicare is that people are living longer.
Right, and that's the other issue. So Social Security may run out of money to pay you the full benefit by 2032, 2033, all right? So that suddenly a third of your Social Security payment will disappear because there won't be enough money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the two political parties have refused to deal with this. And as a result of COVID, the federal government is in hock a tremendous amount of money. The Federal Reserve, in order to finance this, started buying treasuries. Now remember, the federal government issues the money.
Mm-hmm.
So then they issued the money on one end, and then the other end, they bought the treasury notes to absorb the cost. All right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Federal Reserve has trillions of dollars in bonds that they're now gradually selling off back into the bond market. Of course.
Has that been helping?
Yes. But now we have also inflation to deal with. All right? You put all this together, and you have a very volatile combination. You remember back in the 1970s, those of you out there that are a little older that remember the 70s.
I remember it well.
There was tremendous inflation.
Yes.
And you could go to your savings and loan or bank and open up a CD or a money market account and get 8, 10, 12%, and they gave you a set of dishes, remember? But then inflation went up and up and up, and interest rates went up and up and up. All right, now the Federal Reserve has been trying to calm inflation by raising interest rates, and right now they're at a very high level. Inflation has eased somewhat, but it is still high.
So when you say inflation rates have gone up, so in many ways, now is not a good time to buy a home.
Well, it's harder because your interest rates have gone up.
Correct. Exactly.
All right?
It's
now,
harder.
on the other end, you have all these people retiring. And the number of 18-year-olds entering the job market, or 22-year-olds, has declined.
So which means how many jobs are not being filled right now?
Right. So in 2021, we had 8 million jobs that were vacant
8 million.
that we couldn't fill because we couldn't find the skilled workers to fill them.
And now you're going back, that hooks back into education.
Right. 2022, it was 12 million.
Mm.
So we lost $1 trillion in profit and productivity in 21, $2 trillion. Now what's going to happen this year? Now the number has come down somewhat, but wage inflation is running right now somewhere between 4.4 and 5%.
Mm.
What's happening? The companies are chasing after fewer skilled and unskilled workers to fill their jobs. So they're bidding up wages, right? And inflation is rising. So who's winning? Well, actually, inflation is winning over the wage increases at this moment. Now, will that change? Well, the numbers of people are still going to be retiring. So businesses now have to train more workers because they had cut back on training entry-level workers.
Now, along those lines, a little sidebar. I have talked to many, many restaurant owners here in the downtown area. They are so frustrated they cannot hold on to waiters,
Right.
waitresses,
Right.
Staff aides,
Well,
cooks.
that's because people will be hired,
Mm-hmm.
and then someone will offer them more money, and they'll go there.
Mm.
All right.
Which means then to hire that waiter or waitress or the wait staff, you're paying more money.
Yes.
And now you've got to increase your cost for the hamburger or steak or lobster.
And the cost of food is going up too.
Exactly.
But
So it becomes a
let's-
vicious circle.
Let's shift from that
Okay.
to you get sick, and you go over to a hospital's
Mm-hmm.
emergency room,
Mm-hmm.
and you sit there 6 hours before someone sees you.
Edward.
And
2
why
years
is that?
Ago, time out.
Yes.
Edward, 2 years ago,
Yes.
I was in the emergency room at Northwestern. My blood pressure shot up. I was fine. 9 hours in the emergency room.
All right.
9 hours.
Okay.
And
Now-
truly, the place was jammed.
Well, why was that? We're short 1 million nurses.
Mm.
We're short 500,000 doctors. We're short lab technicians, radiologists, name it. Why is that? A lot are retiring, and not enough people are going into those fields. Why is that? Well, let's see. How much education do you need to become a lab tech? Well, at least a certificate or a 2-year degree. You need good math and science, reading and writing skills. We don't have enough kids coming out of high school.
But isn't education becoming cost prohibitive? In terms of if you want to go to medical school,
Okay.
it is off the charts.
Right, but I'm talking about elementary and high school.
Okay.
The latest data shows that the number of kids coming out of high school that read at around the 12th grade level of reading comprehension is only about a third of the public and private school population that graduates.
With a high school diploma?
A third read at the 12th grade level. That
Wow.
was true when I graduated from high school around 1970. What's happened to jobs since 1970 to now? Do you need more education or less education or the same to get a job? It's going up.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Technology. It's Bill Gates' fault. He put those stupid PCs all over the place. And so what we should do, Greg, take that phone you just were working on during the break, throw all the phones out, throw all the technology out. Let's go back to 1970. We have plenty of semi-skilled people who could fill. Where are those jobs now? They're gone. They're gone. Yeah. Is this a conspiracy by this party or that party or this country or that party? No, this is the fourth industrial revolution. Why are people living longer? Well, we have more drugs. We have more treatments. Because of what? Because of technological breakthroughs, medical breakthroughs. You want to end that? I don't think so. All right.
We're going to go to a break here because 8:45 here in Chicago. So
Okay.
you're listening to Catholic Chicago on WNDZ 750 AM. Father Greg Sakowitz, Dr. Edward Gordon. Stay with us. We'll be back after these messages. And again, do not touch that dial. We have a riveting program going on. If you have a question or comment, 312-255-8408.
Ancestry and genealogy are more important every day. People all over the world are wanting to learn more about their family heritage for personal and for health reasons. At Catholic Charities, we are hearing from adults who lived for a brief time at St. Vincent's Orphanage, the wonderful life-affirming agency that operated out of our headquarters for 91 years, serving thousands of women, children, and families until it closed in 1972. Our post-adoption services help adults who want to learn more about their experience at St. Vincent's. Our compassionate staff members provide whatever family background information they can offer, along with support and reunion services. To learn more, call 312-655-7093. That's 312-655-7093. The spirit of St. Vincent's lives on in the inspiring stories that continue to emerge today.
Welcome back.
Es fabuloso verlos.
Dobrze jest znowu być razem.
It's good to be together again.
After so many months apart, pandemic capacity limits have been lifted, and we want to welcome everyone back to church. We can all pray together again. And listen as our choirs lift their voices in song.
We've been together in spirit.
And now, when you are ready, our doors are open wide.
Nuestras puertas están abiertas de par en par.
Nasze drzwi są otwarte.
And we're here to welcome you back to Catholic Mass.
Catholic Charities Refugee Resettlement Program has been especially busy this year, assisting individuals and families who have fled dangerous situations in their homeland, including Afghanistan and the Ukraine. The Refugee Resettlement Team helps with everything they need to start to rebuild their lives in a new country, including housing, employment, clothing, food, English classes, and referrals for legal and immigration services. The refugees are tremendously grateful for the compassion and practical help they're receiving, and they're giving back and helping each other plan for a brighter, safer future. Volunteer opportunities are currently available for those who would like to be family mentors and tutors so children and adults can practice English. To learn more about these rewarding opportunities, call 312-655-7096. That's 312-655-7096.
Welcome back to Catholic Chicago on WNDZ 750 AM, 312-255-8408. We're with Dr. Edward Gordon, tremendous guest on our program.
Thank you.
And you're back again by popular demand. Continue the discussion on the economy, but now broaden it to the, I guess, connected to the world economy,
Yes.
how it affects the U.S. economy.
Well, globalization picked up from the 80s until now. COVID dampened it because it shut down international trade, travel, etc. Now it's picked up again. However, the rise of China between 1980 and today has been a world event.
Say more.
The Chinese National Fund grew to approximately $12 trillion that the government had because they were exporting a lot of goods to the United States. Their labor costs were very low, and they controlled many of the markets, making garments and many other those headphones you have in your ears right now, many other things because of the cheap labor.
Mm-hmm.
That began to change. Why? Well, Japan and South Korea went through the same thing. They started out making cheaper goods, and they gradually, people wanted more money, and they went to making more sophisticated products in Japan and South Korea. It's happening in China now. One of the chief differences, though, is that South Korea and Japan had capitalist economies. China is a communist country with capitalistic tendencies. Now they have a new leader, Xi. He now is attempting to regain state control of the entire economy.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of encouraging entrepreneurs and foreign business, he is discouraging it. The Chinese wiped out a lot of poverty over those 30 years. People had money to invest, the Chinese people.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't get those returns in bank accounts or others. The government controls the stock exchange, who can buy in, who can't. So they invested in property. So the Chinese, if you've gone to China, you will see all these new skyscrapers, office buildings, convention centers, hotels built right next to the older cities.
Mm-hmm.
Many of those were empty. The people bought them as an investment, seeking a return, even though they didn't need another condo. What has happened is that now these zombie cities and the return is starting to crash. The economy was growing, and the government kept pumping money into the real estate market, and now people are not getting a return on those condos. People aren't buying those condos because the government is tightening controls. So, many of the Chinese property giants in real estate, think of the U.S. when we had our real estate disaster a few years ago. 40%.
Was that back in 2008?
Right. 40% of the GDP of China is real estate. 40%.
But I've also heard that the Chinese have been buying a lot of property in the U.S.
Right, and now they're selling it. Remember when the Japanese owned a lot of the United States?
Yes.
In fact, in 1989, the property value of the Imperial Palace in Tokyo was greater than the GDP of Canada. And then that whole thing crashed.
Okay, but around 1989.
Into the 1990, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing is now happening in China on a bigger scale. And the chief difference is the Chinese government now is trying to control the entire economy. So the United States and the Chinese now have starting to become more aggressive regarding Taiwan and its border with other countries.
Now, how does it then connect with the economy of Europe or the Russian-Ukrainian war?
Okay. Germany was exporting a tremendous amount of goods to China. Germany, all right?
Mm-hmm.
Now those exports have slowed down because the Chinese have less money because their economy now is failing. So Germany is going into a recession. Our Commerce Secretary just warned the Chinese they're putting up so many barriers to U.S. investment that the day may come where we no longer will invest in China. Why is that? Because the Chinese now are making things very difficult for foreign investors to operate in China. This has been going on for a long time, and I've been dealing with companies who had manufacturing in China that gradually was taken over by the local government, and in the end they lost their entire operation to locals, and they had no legal relief.
Now, it's interesting, all that you're saying here, some may be listening saying, our program is entitled Catholic Chicago. What does all this have to do with being Catholic and our faith? And I think a lot, because, you know, a lot of what we deal with is our economy and life. You know, people are afraid of losing their money,
yes,
their portfolio, and it's a rippling effect. So we never live in a silo or in isolation, but it's always connecting with other things. Just for example, COVID was tremendously affecting our faith in terms of churches shut down, the rise of TV masses, either on WGN, ABC, live streaming from parishes. So nothing is in a vacuum. It's all interconnected.
Well, let me give you an example. A
Go
lot
ahead.
of
Sure.
jobs left the U.S. and went to China because the wages were lower. Now wages are going up. There's a lot of corruption in China, where companies had to pay bribes in order to operate in China. And now the government is tightening its controls on operations and driving a lot of entrepreneurs of America out. So what's happening? We're reshoring those jobs. Those jobs are coming back to the United States. But now, whereas before you were making socks in a factory in North Carolina, and you had 2,000 people making the socks, you moved that whole thing to China. Now the people are being paid 25 cents an hour rather than $12 an hour, all right? Now that has returned to America. But now, instead of having 2,000 people making the socks, you got 400. Why? You've computerized the whole operation. And now the technology, the robotics can make it. But those people have to be better trained, all right?
To run the robotics.
To
machinery.
run all the automation. We don't have enough people to do that in America. All right? Remember, I told you there's shortages. Correct. We need more skilled people who can do math, read, write, speak, be on teams, etc. All right? So here is a good example of what's going on in China affecting the United States. All right? Now let's look at Russia.
We've got about 20 seconds.
20 seconds. All right. Russia has invaded Ukraine, which is an independent country, and now it has helped to destabilize the markets of Europe, trying to cut off oil and gas to Western Europe, which caused a lot of problems.
And our prices go up.
And prices have gone up. So inflation, this is what's driving some of the inflation in the United States.
So it's all interconnected, the whole world. We need to bring the program to an end.
Well, we'll talk about this again in the
I
future.
definitely want to thank in a very special way Dr. Edward Gordon. Ed, you are a tremendous guest. You are so knowledgeable. I ask a question, you just take off like a rocket with profound answers. So thank you. Give our love to Elaine. Special thanks to our producer, director, soloist, Clinton Cantrell. Great job, Clint. To our listeners, may God bless. May God bless all of you. Have a blessed Labor Day weekend. Be safe. And may the Cubs beat Cincinnati this weekend and then take on San Francisco next week in Chicago. God bless.
Join us every Monday through Friday at this time for Catholic Chicago. You can stream our programs live or listen to past programs by visiting our website, archchicago.org, and clicking on Radio TV. And please connect with Catholic Chicago on social media.